Hey, what's going on, Renaissance Lifers? Welcome back to Renaissance Life TV, where we take life to a whole new level, tackling topics of personal growth and success while giving you a different perspective on navigating life and relationships. On today's show, we're talking about how to become more patient in a relationship. Now, if you're new to this channel and haven't yet subscribed, I want you to subscribe to the channel and don't forget to hit the bell notification icon so you can be notified every time I post a new video. So before I get into how to become more patient in a relationship, I've got a funny story for you guys. This is actually the third time I recorded this video. So talk about being patient. The first time I recorded the video, I realized that my mic wasn't on. And the second time, the entire top of my head was cut off. So this is actually the third time I'm recording this video, and that is the biggest test of being patient if there ever was one. So hopefully that's a great example for you guys for how different things are just gonna happen, things that are out of your control, and you really do have to try to exercise patience. And so to be perfectly honest, when I realized I had to record this video a third time, I was pretty frustrated, but I took a moment, took a couple breaths, thought about it, and then did what I had to do, and now I'm enjoying recording this video for you guys, so I hope you guys get a ton of value out of it. Alright, so let's get right into it. How do you become more patient in a relationship? So the first thing I would like to talk about here is what are some of the things that lead to impatience in a relationship. When I first got married over 6 years ago, I was a lot more impatient, irritable, easily frustrated, and a lot of that had to do with immaturity. So over the years, I've grown a lot and matured a lot. And while I feel like I've always been mature in general, or when compared to my peers, I still had a lot of maturing to do. And so we all mature over the course of our lives. And while we may be mature when it comes to work, or when it comes to our family situations, or dealing with general situations overall, we could still have immaturity when it comes to certain aspects like our relationships. So I noticed that there were several things that I was able to do that made a distinct and a huge difference in my patience in my relationship. And over the years, my wife has told me sometimes, hey, I noticed you've become a lot more patient, or you're being a lot more patient with me, or your answers are a lot sweeter, or things like that. So I'm just gonna run through a couple of the things that have really helped me and have gone a long way, and that I think can help you become more patient in your relationship. So the first thing that made a huge difference for me in becoming more patient in my relationship was getting more sleep. The big thing here was not necessarily the number of hours I got of sleep, but when I got sleep. So when there were times that there were a string of nights built upon each other and stacking up where I just wasn't getting to sleep before midnight, and I was still having to wake up very early, and I had a super full day, that would lead me to being fatigued, exhausted, just feeling like I was at the end of a string. And so in turn, I'd be more cranky, more easily irritable, and less patient in general. When you're just sleep deprived, you tend to respond in ways that you would not normally respond when you're well rested. Your faculties are sharp and that you can just kind of take things in and see them for what they are. This doesn't necessarily mean getting more hours of sleep, but you know yourself. If you're one of those people that needs 8 to 10 hours of sleep, make sure you're getting that 8 to 10 hours of sleep. Even if some other people go out and stay up late, you know what works for you. If you can get by with getting less hours of sleep and still be productive and not have your mood be impacted, then you can get away with less hours of sleep. The important things here that I always say is just focus on getting meaningful sleep. And a lot of times, for me, that means getting some hours of sleep that are before midnight. You know, they say that every hour of sleep that you get before midnight is worth 2 hours of sleep that you get after midnight. So sometimes you can get away with getting less sleep starting before midnight than trying to make up for it with more hours of sleep that starts after midnight. They're just not comparable in the same way. Okay, so even if you get a good amount of sleep or some restful sleep, another way to become more patient in your relationship is to spend some quality time by yourself especially first thing in the morning. It's really great if you don't have to interact with people the first thing when you get up. So I've found that even if I have 10 to 15 minutes to just slowly work into my day, have that time to ground myself, center myself, whether you have a practice that you do in the morning, or maybe what you do is you grab a cup of coffee and you read the newspaper, and that's just your time that you spend to center yourself and spend by yourself. That can go a really long way in grounding you and centering you and setting the course of your day. When you're grounded and centered, you'll respond and react to situations in a better way. And so one of the things that I've realized over time is that a lot of times patience and impatience has less to do with the other person in the room or with your partner or your spouse and more to do with ourselves. It's kind of like that saying that says that if someone can take away your peace, then they're the one in control and you're not in control of yourself. So we control our peace, we control our patience in the way we respond to situations. Of course, there are exceptions. There are those people who know how to push your buttons and want to push your buttons. And if that's happening in your relationship, then you probably have some other things that you want to address. But even then, the way that you respond has everything to do with yourself and not with the other person. Maybe there's some other decisions that you need to think about or other conversations you need to have, but that should not impact our patience. And so that's easier said than done. I'm a lot better now with being patient than I was in the past. Okay, so the next tip here for how to become more patient in a relationship is to remember that not everything you think has to be said. So that first thought that comes to your mind doesn't necessarily have to be expressed. That goes a really long way in becoming more patient. That when you get that first thought, you actually think about it. Think about that thing that you're about to say. Is that really what you mean to say? And what result or what effect do you expect that you're gonna get? And so a lot of times, if we're honest with ourselves, sometimes that first thought that comes to mind is not the best thought, and we know it's maybe a sarcastic remark or a rude remark, but it makes you chuckle a little bit in your head maybe. That part of ourselves that just wants to say it anyway may go ahead and say that thing, and we get the result that we really don't want, but if we're honest, we probably did expect. Give yourself a few moments and think about what you're about to say. And when you give yourself the time to think about it, at least you can get to that second thought, maybe that third thought. And maybe that thought, hopefully, is a lot more patient, is a lot more reasonable, and not a thought that's coming out of irritation or frustration. Okay, now the next way that we can become more patient in a relationship is to take a deep breath. Taking a breath sounds so simple, but it really does a couple different things. The first thing, just like we talked about spending some time by yourself in the morning to center yourself, taking a breath centers you in the moment. So it allows you to get grounded in a particular moment when you're actually interacting and dealing with a situation. So if you're confronted with something that you normally would respond to impatiently and you actually take a breath, it gives you a moment to ground and center yourself. It introduces more oxygen into the bloodstream, into your brain, makes you feel a little bit better, and it gives you the added benefit of a little bit more time. So that 1 to 2 seconds that you take to take a breath may give you the help that you need to not say that first thought that came to your mind. After that breath, you feel a little bit more calm, a little bit more centered, and you think about something else, and maybe that next thing is the way that you respond, that next thing is the way that you react. Okay, so this next thing was a huge one for me, especially early on in my marriage. One of the best ways to become more patient in a relationship is to resolve your stress at work or any discontentment you have with work situations or other things that are happening in your life. This is one of those examples where you start to realize that impatience has less to do with the other person and more to do with you. So those times in my life where I was super stressed at work and maybe wasn't handling the stress in the right way, I would already come home in a certain posture. And that posture was frustrated, irritated, didn't really want to talk to anyone. And so I was already in an impatient state. The first thing when I walk through the door and I'm greeted by my wife, I'm already not in the right frame of mind to receive it. Naturally, I'm going to be more apt to responding in an impatient way. The way that you change that is to try to improve your work situation. If you're stressed at work, figure out what is causing that stress. Is it the workload? Is it how you're managing your workload? And if that's the case, find or try to employ different methods on how to manage your work more effectively, or try to find things that will help you deal with the work better. Ask for help if you need to ask for help, and just do those different things that will help improve your work situation. So another thing that I started to do was I would use the ride and the commute back home from work to center my mind, to clear my mind, whether it was listening to music, whether it was thinking through some of the things and processing my day, so that by the time I got home, I was in a better frame of mind, in a better personal state overall. So that way I was more receptive. You know, I'll also be honest here that some of that impatience, some of the stress and the discontentment from work didn't ever change until I changed my work situation. And so when my work situation changed and I was in a better place and in a place of contentment, I was like a totally different person. So never underestimate the power and the impact of a poor work situation on your demeanor, your personality, your overall state of being. You can be an entirely different person just based on where you're working. So another way to become more patient in your relationship is to assume a position of grace. And so what I mean by grace is a gift. It's something that's not deserved. So you're not gonna be gracious or give grace based on a person's action. You're gonna give grace and be gracious out of your own being. That's just something you're giving to the person freely. And you'll find that when you are more gracious to other people, then they respond in like form. They tend to reciprocate in a more positive way. Even if the person does something or says something that would typically tick you off, because you're responding from a place of grace, you have a more calm or peaceful response. You have a more amicable response. And that will go a long way in helping you to become more patient in general. Okay, so this last thing on how to become more patient in a relationship, this last thing is one that I talk about every time I talk about personal growth. And that is to give yourself time. Whenever I talk about personal growth, I say time is the biggest asset because it takes time to grow. And the person that we are 5 years from now is going to be different, hopefully, in a good way from the person we are today. So the person I was at the beginning of my marriage is not the same person I am 6 years into the marriage. And I'd like to think that I've improved a lot. And so my wife has told me that I've improved a lot. A lot of this just has to do with time and growth. So give yourself the time to grow. Don't be so hard on yourself, but make the conscious effort to improve and to want to get better and to try to grow. So when you get the positive criticism and the things that you can work on, actually try to work on those things. And so if patience is your weakness, you want to be working on becoming more patient daily. Employ different habits and methods. Watch videos like these that will teach you ways that you can deal with impatience, or that you can deal with the triggers that cause you to become impatient, and change those situations in your life that will put you in a position of centeredness, of groundedness, that way you can respond to situations patiently. Alright guys, so that's all I have for how to become more patient in a relationship. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more weekly videos like this. If you've got any comments, please leave them in the comment box down below on how you can become more patient, or what are some of the things that cause you to be more impatient, whether in the past or now. And then I'll be happy to respond to those when you post. And I will see you next time on Renaissance Life TV. Cheers.